You're listening to Aging Uncensored.
Welcome to Aging Uncensored, the podcast where we fearlessly navigate all things aging, maturing, I'm going to say getting wiser, hopefully. Sometimes it can be the reverse. All the things when you're a family caregiver, maybe you work in the industry, maybe you're just going through perimenopause, right? It's pretty interesting to me when I say perimenopause. My friends that are a few generations ahead of me are like, that wasn't a thing.
Right. But now we've discovered that it could be up to 10 years.
Absolutely. Oh, poor Alan. Anyway, so, and poor kids.
My poor children.
That's poor kids. Anyway, so welcome again to Aging Uncensored, where we unpack and navigate all of the things. And because it's uncensored, we get real, raw, and to the truth of the matter.
Yes.
I am your co-host, Christy Baines, and my co-host, Nicole Crawford, is next to me here.
Hello.
Our producer extraordinaire, Taylor Crane, is behind the headphones and the computer. She may add some things. I don't think she has her whiteboard to tell us notes today, but maybe she'll get there. Anyway, grab a cup of coffee, tea, whatever it is, all those things, and get ready for today's podcast.
Yes.
Okay. Two things happen that are so predictable every year in the senior care industry.
People went home, saw the squalor their parents were living in, and then called us.
Yes. I didn't even have to, we didn't even talk about that one.
No, we didn't.
I knew I could lob it up for you and you were going to hit it out of the park. Yeah. So what does that mean? So
Mom and Dad are in crisis, which means you're in crisis.
That's right. So you go home at Thanksgiving and you're like, oh no, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. But you're not going to do anything between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Because you don't want to break their poor little hearts.
No, can't hurt them during the holidays. But then the holidays are a struggle because you're going to see them multiple times.
Yes. It's going to just solidify that Thanksgiving wasn't a fluke accident. It's what's really going on.
That's right. So what we're talking about today is moving mom. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Or crusty old dad.
Or annoying your sister.
Crazy aunt.
Or your crazy aunt, or whatever it is. Or your lovely, wonderful parents that you just adore. And that does happen a lot.
Yeah, that does happen.
That's right. So, and it can take on all different shapes, sizes, or forms.
Yes.
Right. And so it's a lot. It's more difficult than people think. Mm-hmm. Unless you're really fortunate and the family is making the decision to do this, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of guilt.
Yes.
Grief.
Resistance,
struggle, all the things. Mm-hmm. So we're going to dive into that today. Again, we're going to be talking for about 35, 40 minutes, but it's a lot more than 35 or 40 minutes. We're going to hit the highlights and really discuss what this looks like. If for some reason you hear some banging in the background, that would be our lovely co-host, Lady Baines, who today does not have a distraction and she wants to be right with us. But she's okay. So I apologize for any of that.
Her mom has done to her what my mom used to do to me, lock me outside.
That's right. You are totally fine outside, Lady Baines. So we're going to jump into a couple of things. The first thing is, why? Why are we moving mom? So what are some of the reasons that could be why we move moms?
Well, mom could maybe not be able to execute meal preparation, feeding herself, or she potentially is not bathing, dressing, grooming. She's in the same outfit come Christmas as she was on Thanksgiving, and she probably didn't change in between.
Yep.
It could be that she's had a fall, or you realize that she needs more socialization. She
Mm-hmm.
tells you that she's going to church and she tells you that she's going to her civic groups, but in reality, she has been inside for the last year and a half.
Right. And the bills are piling up.
Yes.
And she's, not taking care of herself. So, on the last podcast, when we were talking about the checklist, was that last podcast? Or
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things we talked about is how I discovered the checklist, which was Mama's bag. It was Mama's notebook. Then it was Mama's bag, the navy blue with the pink dots. Well, my grandmother, my Mama Elsie, we didn't think we would ever move her, right? I mean, she had lived in that home for, gosh, I don't even know how many years. I'd have to ask my mom. Many, many, many years. It was a comfortable little home in Clanton, Alabama, a small town in Alabama. And she would have been fine to be there, especially when my grandfather was still around. However, like we discussed, she was showing more signs of confusion and dementia and things like that. And we brought in some extra help. She could have maintained that with the extra help, if she had needed around the clock. One of the reasons why you move mom is cost.
Yes.
She probably wouldn't have been able to keep that going. But she was a strong-willed, independent woman. Mm-hmm. Again, outlived 2 husbands, put 2 children through college, put herself through graduate school, raised on a farm, very independent, strong-willed. And she was going to maintain her home like she thought she was. And really, the tipping point for my mom and my uncle to move her to an assisted living was the caregiver called my mom and said, "Your mother is cutting weeds with a machete." Now, machete might have been a strong word. I don't think she was using machete. Maybe it was a large kitchen knife. I don't see my grandmother whacking weeds with a machete. I don't even think she owned a machete. But let's just call it a large butcher knife.
It could have slashed her leg.
It could have slashed her leg or a finger or whatever. And so that was kind of the point of, you weren't going to stop Mama Betty picking her weeds, tending to her yard. But the way she tended to her yard for 90 plus years was not what she was doing now.
Your neighbors across the street, his grandmother was placed in a community when at 90-ish or so, 90, 91, they came to visit and she was climbing in a tree, pruning the branches.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
We have a client right now that we're in the act of helping the family move because she didn't do well with caregivers in the home and would lock herself in a room and escape out the window. You think your mom is not very strong in her 80s and 90s, but
she is.
If there's a will,
there's a way.
There's a way. So don't underestimate the strong-willed lady.
Yes.
So sometimes, again, so let's go back. What is the why? The why could be the cost.
Mm-hmm. Having 24-hour care partner in the home is just too much.
Right. The why could be safety.
Mm-hmm.
It's even with all the money in the world, it's just not safe for them. Maybe it's
too many stairs.
Too many stairs, exactly. Maybe it's not a brain change issue, it's a physical issue, and there's just too many elevation changes.
Or they're too far away.
They're too far
away.
away.
Isolated in another state and
Absolutely.
Their friends are getting older.
Yep.
Then you might need to move mom or dad to you.
Yeah. One of the spouses, the healthy spouse, it's too much for them,
mm-hmm.
right? Or let's just lead into this. Maybe it's the need, they're isolated, and it's the need for socialization.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they give you a gift, and the gift is, this house is too much to handle, and we're going to choose to move ourselves.
That happens 1 in 200 times.
Right, exactly. When that does happen to you,
take that golden egg and
take
run.
it and give and applaud them. Take your parents out. Just reward them for the gift that they are giving you.
Yes.
Right?
Don't treat it like a headache.
Do not treat it like a headache if they are making the choice to do this. And on the flip side, when you know that it is the right thing to move your loved one, your friend, whoever it is, know that if this is not their choice, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be emotions that you have. There's going to be emotions that they have. You know, I mean, especially if you're dealing with brain changes and things like that.
Yeah.
They're not choosing to go to a one-room community. And that's something else that we're going to talk about when you're choosing the place. Most memory care assisted living, so in the state of Alabama, it's going to be called a specialty care assisted living, but most memory care assisted livings where the particular area of the community is a secured unit. I hate to call it lockdown, but it's a secured unit where only the staff has a keypad to go in and out. And the reason they have that is to prevent elopement. The way they design these communities is that the rooms are smaller. So you're not going to have this lush 2-bedroom or even a 1-bedroom. It may be a suite.
Because they'll never come out.
Correct. And the whole idea is to get them out of the room, in community, socialization, and where, you know, the staff can really kind of maintain a watch on them.
Yeah.
So you're never going to have one-to-one staff.
No.
Caregiver staff resident ratio. It's going to be more of a, if you're fortunate, 1 to 8
During the day.
Probably
About 1 to 12 at night.
Yeah. But some may be 1 to 12, 1 to 15 during the day.
And if it's true assisted living, not memory care, it may be 1 to 25.
Right. Exactly. So remember, this is, especially if you're moving your loved one who's had, let's say, one-on-one caregiving for a little while, it's a shift.
It is. And you might want to have that care partner go in for certain blocks of time just to kind of help peel away those layers of needing someone or having the security of having someone around.
Right, right. So again, let's recap. What are the reasons? Cost, cost is a big issue.
Safety,
huge issue. Probably number one, although if you can't afford to stay at home, cost is number one. Socialization, the needs of their care, those are really the main areas.
And to move her close to you, especially if your house is not big enough.
Correct. Or it's not doable. A family we're working with right now, they're looking at moving their mom from out of state, and they were going to look at having her move with them. However, they still have kids at home. They homeschool one of their children. And the more that they've been spending time with their mom, they recognize this is a disruption for her and a disruption for them. Particularly if they have brain changes like dementia, putting someone in our environment where we have kids playing sports, kids with activities,
friends
kids with
over.
whatever. Our activities are almost too much for us to even handle, let alone someone who's really experiencing brain changes or that's just a different generation. So all things to consider. All right. We've made that decision. Taylor, we might just need to bring her in and see what she does. Sorry, guys. Our co-host is going to join us.
Furry host.
We'll see what happens. So we're there. We know we're going to move her. Hey, lady.
She says, I finally made it in.
One thing we're going to talk about is pets when you move them. That can be that's something to really consider, especially
I'm not leaving without my dog.
If they have a beloved one. So hopefully the beloved one is still able to move around and they're able to continue to take care of them. Like
and they're not biting people.
Independent living community. Right. So, because that's a whole nother thing is when your loved one gets attached to a furball friend and the furball friend probably is past its time to be with us.
Yes.
And that's a very difficult thing. Anyway, I digress. Lady kind of diverted my attention. So once we know why and we're at that point, what's the next step?
You need to find out what level of care they are best suited for.
Yes. So I think probably the first thing we should do is remind our listeners and followers what are the different levels of care And again, we're going to just go off of the 4 levels of care that exist in the state of Alabama. In different states, there are different levels, particularly when it comes to assisted living. There are 2 levels that don't change. You're at your house, right? Well, nobody's going to be surveying you at your house. And really, it's, do you have caregivers? Do you not have caregivers?
DHR has been called.
Right. Well, that's another podcast in itself. And then there's nursing home. And long-term nursing home is going to look the same as far as the level of care that they're providing across the states. And the reason why that is because Medicare dictates what that looks like, because there's Medicare funding and Medicaid funding that go to nursing homes. So all in between is independent living, assisted living, and memory care assisted living. Some states may have like 4 or 5 levels of assisted living. Some states may truly adopt what we call age in place. Alabama's rules and regulations for assisted living and memory care assisted living are not age in place friendly.
They try to push people to a higher level of care as much as possible.
Right. And although there are times when it is the right place to move mom maybe into what we call a continuous care retirement community. What's a CCRC?
Continuous care. I can't even say it now.
Continuous care retirement community. And what is that? It goes from independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing home.
Honestly, though, I find that the newer communities aren't building nursing homes. They may have independent assisted memory care or some sort of mix of those 3,
right?
But very few. Do you know of any new skilled nursings that have popped up?
No, and that may be
in the
because
last 20 years.
No,
yeah,
I don't. They would have like shifted something to maybe a new build or something like that, but no. And although that sounds great, and sometimes it is the right choice because that particular community really has the best of all 4 levels, I tell people all the time, look at where your loved one is in the moment. Because just because 4 or 5 years from now or 2 years from now, they may need a higher level of care,
doesn't mean that they're going to qualify at that community for that level, or they could die before that.
Or maybe it's not, or maybe that community has a really good memory care, but their nursing home's not that good. So whether you're moving them, on campus, which is going to be different staff and things like that, or you're moving them 10 miles away, your loved one's not going to recognize necessarily, particularly if they're at the nursing home level, if they're at the same place or not. And it's all different staff. So don't get locked into, I have to find a place with all levels of care.
And don't necessarily think that you have to go to a community that has a buy-in.
Right.
Thinking that you're going to get a grand discount if you get to that higher level of care.
Right. Or that higher level of care, again, like we said, is
available.
A good level of care.
Right.
So in Birmingham, where we are, we only have, 2 buy-ins now? I think
so.
2. Yeah. So that's not, again, other states may have more, depends. I think at some point it'd be cool to talk to our friends across other states and see what happens.
Maybe with Guide, we'll be able to do that.
Maybe with Guide, yes, absolutely. We'll be able to do those things. So you got to find out what level they are in. So how do we do that? So
let's just say, can
go
I
to
just
your
spit it
doctor?
out there? I was going to say, your doctor thinks that you're at home or you're in a nursing home. There's no in between for most doctors, unless they specifically work with older adults and they have educated themselves in knowing what the different levels of care are, or they've just gone through it with their own parent.
Right.
Otherwise, they don't understand.
They don't understand.
They think it's a nursing home.
That's right. That's right. They have no idea.
So don't go to your doctor and say, should I move mom into assisted living or memory care?
Right.
They don't know.
They don't know. Again, unless they work with older adults,
Yes.
and they know the community. Otherwise, it's like, don't know. So where do we find that out?
You could look up the Aging Life Care Association website and find a professional and see if there's a care manager in your area.
That's right. And how do we do that? So you go to aginglifecare.org. On the right side is a little button that says Find an Aging Life Care Expert. You put your zip code in, And I've noticed they've expanded the radius. So it's like 15 miles, 25 miles,
100 miles.
50. It goes to 500.
Does it really?
Now.
Wow.
At least 200, 500. Taylor, look that up. So fact check me, please. Anyway, we'll get back to that.
It's not a debate, but we'll still fact check.
That's right. However, so you're going to look at that, and, if you're in an urban area, you may find
one that's 10 or 15 miles away.
You may find 30 care managers that are in your, 25 miles, within 15 miles, whatever. If you're in a more rural area, 250 is the most. Okay, so 250 is the most, not 500. That'd be
feels like 500 if you're the care manager driving it.
Right, exactly. So you're going to, they can help you, one, particularly in that state, understand the rules and regulations for the multiple levels of care. And two, they will also know, if they have experience as a care manager, they will also know what each of those communities look like.
Right.
They will have had people in those communities. And, and being a care manager since 2009, you've been a care manager since 2017. Where you recommended 17, 8 years ago may not be what you recommend now.
Right.
And I didn't even talk about this from the very beginning. Let me time out for a second. You and I have we're probably the only ones on the team that have this unique experience, in that we've both been in administration in assisted living and memory care communities.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been on the inside.
And I've worked in a skilled for a little while too.
Yes, you had skilled care experience. So we've worked on the inside. We've been in leadership on the inside. We understand, the dynamics that they have to go under with staffing and surveyors and, expectations of families and all the different things that an administrator and leadership have to understand when someone's moving their loved one in, and also how long you can maintain somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If you maintain somebody too long, that could be detrimental to that person.
Other residents there, or the staff that's there,
Right.
or their
or
license.
You get the surveyors that walk in and they're like, half your residents have got to move. So we do come with that unique experience. And I will say, when we talk about, once you've moved mom in, setting your expectations, I think our experience really can speak to that. So you can, Aging Life Care, of course. There are also placement agencies. So one thing about Aging Life Care experts is we are paid by our clients.
Mm-hmm.
We do not accept referrals from anybody. Like we accept referrals, we don't accept referral fees. So if we move you to, Sunrise Community is not
going to give us any money
give
for
us
that.
any money or anything for that matter.
They're going to say thanks.
They're going to say thank you. And we're getting past the marketing people. We want to get to the people that are responsible for the direct care and know those people, because that is actually who's going to be taking care of your mom, right? Now, there are placement agencies that have been around for a long time, and I don't want to, I think that they have great intentions. I think even among the different placement agencies in your area, you want to vet which ones probably have the most experiences, probably the people that are that are placing your mom, the representatives have had experience in the industry. They're not just someone for marketing.
Right.
So those are good. There are reputable, good organizations, but I would research it. I would ask the questions, because when you're working with a placement agency, one, I don't know any placement agencies in the area that actually help with placement to a nursing home, because a nursing home can't take that referral because of Medicare rules and regs, but they'll be placing for independent assisted living and memory care. But you want to know what they know behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important and how many different organizations they work with.
Right.
Because that's going to, really open up what that looks like. So if you're looking at working with somebody that's necessarily hired, if you will, it would be an aging life care expert, AKA a care manager, or a placement agency.
Or you may not have many options. If you are in a more rural area of town, there may be just one or two places to choose from. And so you can always go to that community, ask for a tour, and then ask them, can I bring my mom, my dad, my uncle, my whoever in for an evaluation or an assessment, and see what they say.
And so sometimes the best referral for that is community word of mouth. Do your friends have their family members in this community? Do you know somebody that works at that community that you could talk to them and understand behind the scenes? So sometimes the best referral is a friend that's had this experience, or, one of your church members, or one of your fellow colleagues or fellow coworkers, or what have you. So those are all good to vet those things. And yes, you can research it online. You can look at scores, particularly for nursing homes.
Medicare, I think, scores. Medicaid, I think, scores. Or they're probably CMS is all the same, but
absolutely, across the states. In the state of Alabama, you can go to adph.org, which is the Alabama Department of Public Health, and you can look up the facility roster, and if they have major issues,
it'll show up.
It'll show like a contingency, or
what type of license
of license, exactly. So those are all things to do. The other thing is, where was I going with this? Well, on independent living communities, they are not surveyed by the state. So you've got to think about them as a senior apartment with additional enhancements, I guess, maybe a check-in,
housekeeping,
the meals are provided. They might assist with laundry for an additional fee, security guard, and they may have an outside caregiving agency that can do incremental caregiving that doesn't have to meet a 4-hour need or something like that. So there's all different things to look at.
So if you hear the term shared care model, then that is one of those communities that has an outside independent agency that's going to come in and do certain things like medications, bathing assistance, and making sure that someone gets to the dining room, things of that nature.
Right. Help with laundry, those kinds of things. Absolutely. So look at all of these different levels. And even though someone may be early in stages of dementia, you can still go to an independent living if they were able to kind of maintain somewhat at their home. They should be able to maintain somewhat in an independent living community, in the right independent living community with extra resources.
But keep an eye out, because anyone who is living with a brain change, if you change their environment, it pushes their dementia to a degree and kind of pushes them down that slope a little bit. So if they're higher functioning and you feel like it's safe, still go and check in and make sure that there's someone checking in on that person for a long time, because you could see a drop.
Right. Absolutely. When we are talking specifically about a memory care move, I love, and I use it all the time, one of the things that you have always said and discussed with family members is where their loved one is right now. Trying to keep up in our environment is very stressful, right? I mean, they're just trying to keep up in kind of I don't want to say normal, but the typical day-to-day function, socialization, environment. And when they move to memory care, you tell them, you may see, go ahead, I don't want to steal your thunder.
Their brain relaxes.
Yes.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So it means that they're not on high alert all the time, trying to think about what comes next, what should I be doing. is this right? Because there's someone there that I can just poke my head out the door and say, is it breakfast time? Or I can poke my head out the door and say, what are we doing next? And someone's always there to tell me what's going on. So you may see a decline or what looks to be a decline in that person after they move to a memory care, but it's really just their brain is able to relax and not have to worry and be so on all the time.
And when you say a decline, it's not a decline in their care
No.
or their safety, which actually are improving. It's maybe their cognition is resting a little.
And they're not so fretful.
Yes. Yes. So, you may see that mom isn't keeping up with things as well as she did at home, but her anxiety is down, her agitation's down,
Happier mom.
happier mom. She may be a little more pleasantly confused mom, but that's okay.
Yeah.
If you're going to go through the dementia experience, pleasantly confused is
Way better.
way better than any of the other
Or
alternatives.
she may start complaining about the bitch across the hall.
That's right. And that's okay. It's like going back to junior high and having something to
Exactly.
talk about. It gives you something to chat about.
That man that stares at her in the lunchroom.
That's right. Or Miss Sally that comes and takes my purse.
That's right. Or that twit that makes me take a shower.
right. But then she forgets to tell you how she took somebody's Chotsky yesterday.
It's so
Look
true.
at this lovely new little rabbit that I have.
Mom, the bottom of this says Sarah, and your name is not Sarah.
Right. Oh, she gave it to me. That's the famous last words.
That's right.